Cool. Okay. So I think we can get started. So hello all. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are logging in from. Welcome to the What's New ServiceNow Xanadu release highlights for ESG. My name is Vaishak Krishnan, and I am a product manager within the risk view here at ServiceNow. I am joined by my colleague Sachin, who is also from the product management team. And between the two of us, we will be covering the new capabilities that we have released as part of the ESG management application for the Xanadu release, which went live in the August store release. So with that, let us get started. So the safe harbor notice is just to remind you that we might be covering some forward-looking statements as well. So today's session is a part of the live on ServiceNow series, which is a curated event series to connect you with ServiceNow experts and peers that can help you deploy your products and services to achieve value faster. We hope you join us again and for another webinar. You can view the entire schedule by scanning the QR code or using the link in the chart. I'll probably just stay for 10 seconds on the slide if in case you want to scan this. But otherwise, we can also send you the link, after the meet. A few housekeeping activities before we get started. So we have saved some time for Q&A at the end of the session. So please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to post your questions as and when we go along, and we will ensure that your questions are answered. This session is recorded and will be shared on the ServiceNow community. And the last thing is, after the presentation, you will be prompted for a short survey. So it would be great if you can provide us your input so that we can keep on improving this as we do it in the future as well. So yeah, so this is, as I said, so both I and Sachin will be covering the webinar today. Both of us are a part of the inbound product management team. And with that, let us get started with the first capability that we introduced as part of the August store release, which is a very exciting one, which is Scope 3 dashboard. So I'll pass it on to my colleague Sachin, who will cover this. Sachin?
Yeah, thanks, Vaishak, for the quick introduction. So today, to begin with, I'll start covering the Scope 3 dashboard and Scope 3 emissions management that we have released as part of Xanadu. So I'm really excited to introduce our new Scope 3 emissions management application. And as I mentioned, it's part of ServiceNow Xanadu release. So this application provides organizations with the capability to comprehensively calculate and track their scope 3 emissions. So by gaining a clear understanding of indirect emissions throughout the value chain, right? So organizations can effectively measure their overall environmental impact and ensure compliance with evolving sustainability regulations. So I'll probably quickly brief about why we have built this, and then I'll quickly navigate to the instance and show the quick demo as well. So today, as we all know, organizations are increasingly accountable for their entire environmental footprint, extending beyond just direct emissions and to include even indirect emissions that occur through their supply chain and to disclose this data. But we all know how complex it is to gather and disclose Scope 3 emissions data. To manage this complexity, the Scope 3 dashboard, it will serve as a vital tool that simplifies the process of calculating and tracking these indirect emissions, generally known as Scope 3 emissions. By offering a comprehensive, holistic view of an organization's environmental impact through this dashboard, it empowers decision makers, maybe with an ESGM or decision makers within the organization, to make informed choices about be it procurement or identify key areas for emission reduction and ensure adherence to evolving regulations in pertaining to Scope 3. So I'll quickly list out what are the features that we have built as part of Scope 3 emissions management application. And I'll also cover the different types of categories of data that can be visualized and collected as part of this application. So to begin with, we have three categories of data that is collected as part of this application. Those are mainly GHG categories, and second one is spend category, and the third one is supplier category. So when we talk about GHG categories, these are the category 1 and 2 within GHG, and as part of these categories, our application is capable of collecting data from the emissions of goods and services we purchase and the capital goods we use. We can track and understand emissions from the extraction, be it production, be it transportation process involved. This allows us to identify high impact areas and prioritize our emission reduction efforts within these two categories, uh, enhancing our overall sustainability performance for the organization. And the second one is the spend category, which is used by many organizations, where emissions can be directly linked to our spending patterns, right? So using the spend data, we can calculate emissions using our calculated metric definitions, and then these emissions can be visualized within Scope 3 dashboard, and we can calculate emissions that is segregated into different categories, may it be office equipment versus transportation services, for example. And this approach enables us to target which are the high spend areas and which are the significant environment impact areas, which will allow us to implement effective carbon reduction initiatives. Lastly, we have the supplier category. So be it for any organization, suppliers play a crucial role in our value chain emissions. And understanding their impact is essential for comprehensive emissions management. The supplier category in the dashboard helps us analyze emissions generated by different suppliers, allowing us to work more effectively with them to reduce their environmental impact. This data is vital for identifying key suppliers that significantly contribute to our Scope 3 emissions and for developing targeted strategies to engage them in our sustainability efforts. This collaborative approach not only reduces emissions, but also strengthens an organization's supply chain resilience and sustainability, ultimately contributing to our broader environmental goals. I'll quickly now walk through the dashboard by navigating to the instance. Hope everyone can see my screen and the instance.
Yes.
Okay. I'm now in the ESG workspace within ServiceNow instance. I'll now navigate to the Scope 3 dashboard. Let's quickly cover which are the data points that are collected that makes this dashboard work. And I'll briefly talk about our newly introduced tables and data model, which enables data collection for these different data points. So to begin with, so at the top, we have the total emissions view for an organization. This is the aggregated Scope 3 emissions for an organization, and it mainly covers the emissions that are tracked through three different categories that I mentioned earlier. So this aggregates all three different emission types, and this calculation is done in a way that there is no overlap in between these three categories, and we exclude if there are any common data that is there, and we make sure we do not double count any data points, and we make sure that it is aggregated in the yearly manner so that organizations can track their Scope 3 emissions year on year basis and make sure their reduction strategies are aligned as per their goal. And in the second report, we have the emissions split down based on different methodologies. So as part of the scope 3 calculation, we have 3 different categories and also 3 different calculation methodologies that are utilized for the underlying calculations. This is mainly by EEIO data, which is the calculation by spend-based emission factors, right? And in the second data point or second calculation methodology is the LCA approach, where we have the LCA data for different CMDB models and assets, and based on this LCA data, we apply different formulas to calculate the emissions out of it. And then we also have the supplier data, and by using different supplier emission factors, customers can calculate the supplier emissions using different supplier emission factors and based on how they want to segregate these data points. So these are the 3 different calculation methodologies that are employed within Scope 3 dashboard. Are there any questions until now?
So, Sachin, there is one question on the Q&A, which is, what about an emission to create, like delivering goods to their customers?
Okay. Yeah, so we can do that. I mean, if we have, maybe while walking through the data model, I'll quickly explain that as well, how we can tag the category to different models and activities and calculate emissions out of it.
Sure. And I also see Bhakti Shah has raised her hand. So Bhakti, if you can ask your question, or you can also put it in the Q&A section also.
Yeah. Okay, I'll move on to the next
Yeah,
report.
you can move.
In the next report, we now have the split of emissions within supplier and spend category. This is a drill down version of the emissions calculated from suppliers and from the spend categories. And this drill down is now in the models, underlying models, and also we also have different we also have different calculation methodologies within model, and we can see that segregation here. For example, for AIX servers, the emissions are calculated using LCA data for some of the models, and it's also calculated using EIO data for rest of the models. So this data, as I mentioned earlier, these models are ideally not overlapping in nature, hence the emissions are unique emissions for different models. And similarly, we can see that there is 3 different calculation methodologies applied for servers, and there's only one methodology or one data point that's available for computers, which is mainly through supplier data, and hence supplier emission factors are used in the calculation of emissions for the models, that is computer models. And in the next section, I have the similar emission segregation for scope 3 categories. Here we are covering category 1 and category 2, that is capital goods, purchased goods and services. Again, as part of this drill down, we are also seeing how the data is split between 3 different methodologies. And let's say if an organization wants to move to a certain type of calculation methodology, or let's say if they want to move to the supplier emission factors, which is probably more accurate for certain categories and models, they can plan that transition and make that happen through the insights that is generated as part of Scope 3 dashboard. Along with that, we also have additional insights for the suppliers itself, and we can now collect data through manual metric definition to understand whether your suppliers align with SBTi approved targets or whether your supplier is disclosing any of the CDP questionnaires. So using manual metric definitions, this data can be collected, and we can visualize this in this scope the dashboard, and we can also drill down here and see if which supplier is able to align with the SPTI approved targets and which are not, and we can make the decisions accordingly, right? So that is in terms of the dashboard here. And in terms of the data model, we have different tables introduced as part of scope 3 configurations. Customer can, organizations can set up different categories, and they can align the models, the CMDB data according to their setup. They can align it different category types. Then they can use, if they wish to calculate the emissions through EIO dataset, they can make use of the dataset that is provided as part of ESG content accelerator. Or if they wish to calculate it through supplier emission factors, then they can use the supplier emission factors that they gather from the suppliers and make sure the emissions can be calculated accordingly. That's the quick overview of the Scope 3 emissions management application and the Scope 3 dashboard. Back to you, Ashok.
Thank you, Sachin. Let me start sharing my screen. And meanwhile, there are a couple of questions on the chat, so you can answer them.
Sure.
Cool. So let me go on to the next major capability that we have released, which is the fiscal calendar one. So
Sorry, Vaishak, I'm not seeing your screen yet. Are others able to see it?
um,
Okay, I think they can see it. Right.
are they able to see?
Yes.
Yeah, it seems so. Yeah. Okay. So so the next major capability that we have built is which has also been something that has been asked by some of our existing customers as well, is a key gap that we have filled in, which is the lack of support for fiscal calendars. So right now, within the metric definition and metrics that are created within ESG and also within operational risk, they are tightly coupled to the standard Gregorian calendar year. That means even if you want to define the collection periods for non-standard calendars, it is not possible. And of course, as we know, this can vary from country to country. For example, in India, the fiscal calendar followed is from April to March, whereas in US, there are different fiscal calendars that companies follow, which can be from Feb to Jan, it can be from October to September, from July to June, so on and so forth, right? So what we have done in this release is to enable our customers to create fiscal calendars, multiple ones, and use them while defining the metric definition. Now, one of the most important things that I would like to call out is the ability to aggregate your data across these multiple fiscal calendars. And this is the part that I would really like to call out, because that's also something that helps in solving a major problem, which is different set of entities collecting different collecting data across different fiscal calendars, and then they would want to aggregate it for reporting. So that is also something that we have worked as part of this release. And I would also like to call out a couple of things. So which is the monthly. There are a few frequencies that we are supporting in the first version, which is monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, and annually. And also, as of now, the calendar should start from the 1st of every month. Right. So this is something that a couple of callouts that I wanted to do as part of the first release, which is what we have done in August. Right now, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Right. So assume there is an organization, a fictional organization called Acme Global that has that follows a fiscal calendar from Feb to Jan, and it has two subsidiaries, Acme US and Acme India. Both of them follow different ones, right? Different fiscal calendars. Right. So the US one, of course, follows the parent one, which is from Feb to Jan, and the India one follows from April to March. Right now, just to pictorially represent it, this is how the US fiscal calendar would look. This is how the India one would look, and this is how it would the global reporting calendar would look like. Right. Now when you want to do a data collection, each of these entities, US and India, will follow their when they define their metric definitions and when they define their metrics, they can collect in the fiscal calendar that they would want to follow, right? So the data collection is also in the same fiscal calendar, right? So which is what you see on the screen here. So how can that be done? I will show you when I get into the demonstration. But essentially, they would be able to collect the data within that. So for example, let's assume this is the data that they have collected, right, for their respective quarters. And this is a quarterly metric definition. And they can do it for uh, those entities. And once they do that, they can essentially aggregate this data on the metric definition based upon the same quarter, right? So this is something that helps in the reporting for the global reporting calendar, which is your Acme Global in this case. And that allows the flexibility for your child entities or your subsidiaries, basically in this case, to collect data in their own fiscal calendar and help in aggregating this on the global reporting calendar. Right. So let me show you a demonstration of how this would work like. So let me go into my instance, and I hope you are able to see my instance. Okay. And the first thing you have to do is to set up your fiscal calendars, right? So we have added a new module within this called metric calendar configuration. And within this metric calendar configuration, you can define all the fiscal calendars that you would want to follow. So in this case, I've already created a few. So let me just create a new one also to show you how this is done. Right. So let me just give. You can specify a month. The end month automatically populates. The year representation is whether you want to represent your fiscal calendar by the end year or by the start year. Now, what does this mean? So let's say if you represent it by end year, then the fiscal calendar, wherever you want to use in your reporting, it will essentially, if it overlaps 2 years. So let's say if you want the calendar from August 24 to July 25 to be represented as FY25, which is your ending year, right? You can select year representation. But there are certain countries that would want to follow by the start year, where the same representation would be done as FY24, right? So it depends upon how you want to configure. So that flexibility is also something that we are providing. And once you do that, you can save this, and you can also associate the entities that you would want this particular calendar to follow, right? So let's say this is, I would want a particular entity to follow this calendar. I can specify that, right? So I'm just selecting a random entity. And once I do that, it will essentially map this entity to this calendar, which means you are specifying to the application that Acme UK entity is going to follow this particular fiscal calendar, right? So this is all of this. What I'm showing is a one-time setup, which is what you will do during the implementation, where you can define all your fiscal calendars at once. You can map the entities to which you want the calendar to be mapped to. And the last step that the last couple of steps that you had to do is, one is to map the calendar, right? So in the example that I was showing, the global reporting calendar was the one that was my reporting calendar. So I will use that as a target calendar, and I will select the one that I created newly as the mapping. So this ensures that when I'm reporting, I am using the global reporting calendar, and the data collection can still happen at the at the Acme UK entity level, which will follow this particular calendar. But the aggregation will still happen at the global reporting calendar, which is when the organization would want to report it. And once I do that, I just need to click on generate metric calendars. And that's it, right? So that is basically your setup part, right? So, and this, as I said, this is a one-time setup. As long as you are not adding any new calendars or any new entities that follow a different calendar, you can do it for, you can do it once as part of the initial implementation. Now, how will these be used, right? So let me go into the ESG workspace and show you what is the difference in how the metric definitions are created, versus, I mean, how it was created till now versus how, how can you use this fiscal calendars within your metric definitions, right? So let me go into a new metric. Let me try creating a new metric definition. And once I create a new metric definition, by default, I will see a standard calendar. So you will see a new field here called calendar. And by default, this is a standard calendar, which is the Gregorian calendar, right? Which is what, all the metric definitions have been using till now. But let's say I want to use, any other calendar that I would have defined, I can select here, right? So I can, probably select the new one that I just created. Rest of the things remain the same, right? So as I select this, I can select any of these data collection frequencies. I can give the name, description, etc., etc. So all of these things remain the same. There is no other change, right? So that's the only, that's the only change that I would like to call out as part of the metric definition creation. Please note that within the metric itself, you will have you will also have this the calendar field, which you can, if you want, override itself. But in case you do, if you are not overriding, you can also by default on the metric, the calendar that will be selected is what you have mapped here, right? So all the, if you are selecting an entity which is Acme UK, by default on that metric, the Acme UK calendar will be selected. Right. So let me show you an example that I have already created. Right. So here I have defined my calendar as the global reporting calendar, and I have mapped two entities to it, Acme India and Acme US. So within the Acme US, I have already mapped my US fiscal calendar to this particular entity. So when when you go back to the metric definition and click on the metric for Acme US, you will see that the calendar selected is by default the US fiscal calendar. Right. So you can see the US fiscal calendar, and the one for India will be the India fiscal calendar. So that is something that will automatically be populated within the metric, since I have already mapped it as part of my configuration. Right. So the data collection will happen, and as you see within the metric data, the data collected will be, so the Q1 ideally is 1st of April to 30th of June, uh, which is the Q1 for the India fiscal calendar that I have defined. Uh, Before we introduced this change, it was the Q1 was by default Jan to March. So now with this capability, you can define your calendar, and accordingly the application will take and use that for your so that is how the fiscal calendar capability works. So let me go back to my instance. Sachin, are there any questions related to fiscal calendar on the chat or on Q&A?
Yes, there is one. The question was, why does not India subsidiary follow the HQ's fiscal year?
Yeah, I mean, it can. I just used an example where I tried to make it a little more complex to show that in case if it is not following the the HQ's fiscal year, it can do that. But yeah, completely. I mean, it can follow the HQ's fiscal year also.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, cool. So let me then move on to the next capability that we have introduced. So this is an enhancement to our existing metric data entry component, which is used by data owners to provide data, and also by approvers to to do approvals, right? So we have enhanced this component in this release to add a set of filters that can help the users narrow down the metric data tasks for both submission and approval. right? So for a data owner, if they want to narrow down the list of tasks by a particular entity, by a particular group or subgroup, by a particular date range, all of that can be done now with this enhanced filter panel that you see at the top here, right? So again, let me show you the how does this look in the application. So let me go back to my instance and let me impersonate as a data owner. And let me navigate to the ESG workspace. So there you see, right? So at the top, you see this new filter panel that we have added as part of this release. And when when I go here, I can see all the entities that are, that have tasks assigned to me. So let's say I want to see the uh, all my metric data tasks that are for the entity IT. I can do that. I can also filter it by the group and subgroup. So by default, when you apply the IT filter, it will only show the groups and subgroups that are there for this particular entity. So let me remove this. And here I can do all the, so metric group filter was something that was already there. So we have also included the metric subgroup filter. So by default, when you apply a group filter, it will filter it by the subgroups that are present within the parent group, right? One more thing that I would like to call out here is that the entities that you see here are only the entities for which this particular data owner has tasks assigned to them, right? So Renee, who is the data owner, has only tasks for these 8 entities, right? So it will not show all the 100 or 150 entities that might be there for the that might be there as part of the application. They will only see those entities for which they have been assigned a task. Similarly, you can also filter it by the date, start date and end date, and all of that, right? So this also helps the data owner and also the approver also to filter it by the to narrow down the metric data task for review and data entry. So the same filter panel will also appear for an approver as well, right? So that is another enhancement that we have done as part of this release. Moving on to the next one, I'll pass it on to Sachin.
Thanks, Vishak. So the next feature that we want to cover is the updates to the ESG content accelerator. So as part of Xanadu release, we now have different emission factor datasets that will be available for organizations to download and to use these emission factor datasets in their emission calculations. This will be readily available through the ESG content accelerator, and customers can choose to download the datasets that they require, and it may depend on different industries they operate. It may depend on the locations they operate. So customers can choose the different emission factors and choose to download as per their requirements. So this has been asked by multiple organizations, and this was one of the primary challenges which businesses face, right? It's the manual collection of these emission factor data sets and the tedious process to manage and scour through different databases and see whether the data set is up to the date, so that they have to calculate these emissions accurately. So using the content accelerator and different emission factors available, uh, customers can download these, and I'll quickly navigate to the instance and show the download process as well. So I'm now back in the ESG workspace, and if I now navigate to the content accelerator, we have the frameworks and regulation sections, which was already
Sachin, sir,
available.
Sachin, we are not able to see your screen. Let me stop sharing. Probably you can reshare once more.
Okay.
Yeah, now we can see. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So now, as part of this ESG content accelerator, we have also updated the frameworks and regulations that are available, uh, which was this feature was already present, but we have now added the IFRS SASB standards as well to the content accelerator. Along with it, we now have this new tab, which consists of different emission factor datasets. So with the Xanadu release, we now have 4 different datasets. That is for the E-grid, we have GHG emission factors by EPA. We have the UK GHG factors, which is generally known as DEFRA, and we also have EIO data sets that can be used to calculate spend-based emissions. So this emission factor data set, we will also maintain the versions of it, meaning we will update these data sets whenever there is an update to the data sets itself, and we will release the updated versions of the data sets as and when the original data sets evolve. Apart from that, one quick thing that I wanted to also mention is, as part of EIO emission calculations, we would also need the inflation factors to uh, to be there to calculate the emissions, right? We also now have inflation factors available, and customers can use this inflation factors and calculate EIO emissions. That is all from my side for the content accelerator. Back to you, Vishal.
Thanks, Sachin. That that is definitely going to add a lot of value. So with that, let me move on to the next set of enhancements, which we have done for metrics. So there are a couple of enhancements that I would like to call out as part of this. The first one is the ability to create ad hoc tasks. So this is to address off-cycle requests in case the organization needs to collect data for, let's say, a leadership presentation, or anything that that requires them to collect on-demand data. So right now, within metric definitions, a lot of things are automated, right? You create a metric definition, you set up the frequency, and the application automatically sends out the metric data task based upon the frequency you have scheduled, right? So there is very less manual intervention required, and all the start dates and end dates are basically fixed based upon the calendar that you have selected also. But in case if you want to collect an off-cycle request, or probably you want to collect data for a particular presentation that you might have to make to your leadership for the past 2 weeks, you only want to collect the data for the past 2 weeks, right? So in order to address that kind of a request, and where you don't want to go outside the application and probably DM or email that person, hey, I need data from this date to this date. Rather than doing that, you can have that data collected within the application itself, so that it can also be used for other purposes, and you will have the ESG management application, which is your system of record to to have that data as well, right? So let me show how you can do that. So let me move on to my instance. So this is a particular metric, and as you go into the metric, you will see a new button here, which is called create ad hoc task. And if I want to collect data for, let's say, the past 2 weeks, right? I can provide the start date, and let me just give the start date and this end date. I can also specify a due date. This is the date by which I want the data, because my presentation is due at on the 7th, right? So I would want the data by 3rd, let's say, and I submit it, right? So as I do that, the ad hoc metric data task would be created, and you can go here and you will see a new task that has been created, which is ad hoc metric data task, right? Which is to only collect, which is to provide data for that specific time frame that I have given. So this is how you can create these ad hoc data tasks, and this will help you, have all your data at one place, which is your ESG management application, rather than at different places across emails, DMs, and some of your regular data, which is already there in the ESG management application. So that is the first enhancement we have done. The second one is also super helpful, because we have introduced an advanced approval flow. Now, one of the feedback that we have been getting from our customers is that we have the approval levels. We have the approvals as part of the metric data task, but by default it is just one level of approval. But some orgs might have three levels of approval. Some might have two levels. Some might have a different workflow where you would need two levels to approve together before it moves to the third level. So you might have different business logic depending upon your organization, right? So all of that required customizations to be implemented. Now we have tried to solve that problem by enabling the GRC approval configurator app, which is an application that is also used by some of the other IRM or risk apps like BCM or advanced risk. They are already using that. So we have introduced that as part of ESG management also, where the ESG admins can define whether you want a simple workflow, which is whatever you have today, a single level of approval, or do you want an advanced level of approval where you can configure how many levels you want, how do you want each level to be configured, who are the approvers at each level, and all of that, right? So that can be done by the ESG admin, and that is done through this approval configurator. So as you go here, you can specify what object do you want to do the approval for. So in this case, we are talking about metric data task approval. So you can create a new record here. I've already done that for the purpose of this demo, but that would essentially be the first step, right? And you can also use it for any other tasks also that you might have. And once you do that, you can out of the box, you can define up to 10 levels of approval. Right? You can out of the box, you can define 10 levels of approval, which would be enough for almost everyone, right? And at each level, you can define who would be the approver for that particular level, right? So you can go and define who is my level one approval, and here you have multiple options. You can specify a particular person. You can specify approver from source. You can if your business logic is slightly more complicated, you can also specify scripted approvers. All of those can be there, right? So in this particular case, in this particular example, I had specified a specific approver, which was Oliver Jones, right? That is what I had used. Let me unsave this, and you will see here that I had specified a specific approver called Oliver Jones in the logic, right? But you can also specify a particular group, or you can also define it by logic. For example, you want this set of entity owner to be your to your approval. So all of that can be defined out of the box here without any customization. So that is another major enhancement that we have done as part of this release. Yeah, let me move on to the last set of enhancements. So these are a set of miscellaneous enhancements that we have done, right? Based upon a lot of feedback from our existing customers and prospects. The first one is on the sustainable IT. So sustainable IT is a new capability that we had launched in the Vancouver release, which is aimed to help the IT teams track their carbon footprint coming from your IT devices, hardware assets, your data centers, etc. Now we have enhanced this dashboard to show models within a particular model category. So as part of the sustainable IT dashboard, we were showing the highest consuming model categories, highest consumption, and also the highest emission model categories. Now we have gone 2 levels deep as part of this enhancement, where you can click a particular model category and see the models in that order, and also the assets associated with that particular model, right? So as I said, we are going 2 levels deep, which will obviously give the teams much more insights into what are some of the problematic models, what should they be doing as part of the next step to help improve their IT carbon footprint. Let me show you a quick demo of this by navigating to the ESG workspace, and let me go into the sustainable IT dashboard. So this is in the hardware assets tab. And as I said, we were till now we were showing energy consumption by model category and emission by model category, and that is what that is where we were limited to. Now you can go and click on this particular model category and see within computer which are the highest energy consuming models. So these are all the different energy consuming models, and by default it will show you the assets that are tagged to that particular model. So this is the first model, and by default it is showing that. But let's see, if I want to see all the assets for my MacBook Pro 17-inch, I can click that and so on and so forth, right? So basically you are going from a model category to the model to the assets. And in this section, we are also showing the top models by energy consumption as an extra insight. So that is the first capability that I would like to call out as part of our miscellaneous enhancement, which I think will add a lot of value to the sustainable IT dashboard and to your IT teams. The second one is that we have enhanced our Office 365 plugin to rather our narrative disclosures capability, which is something we released in our Washington release, to also enable the SharePoint integration. So till now we were doing it for OneDrive, but now we have enabled it for SharePoint as well as part of this. And the last one is improvements on our Office 365 plugin. So this plugin, as you might know, is helps the reporting and disclosure, the ESG reporting teams to create the reports in Word and import their data from the ESG management application directly from Microsoft Word itself, without having to navigate to the application, download the data, copy paste that into Word. You don't have to do all of that. You just can directly use this plugin, select what do you want to import into your Word doc, and just click on add, right? So in this release, we have added a couple of minor enhancements. The first is the ability to copy your document ID directly from this, right? So this is something that you would need to do as part of your narrative disclosures workflow. But instead of clicking and copying and having that extra chance of missing out a number while copying and introducing more probability for error, we have just introduced a copy icon here, which makes the user experience more smooth. The other important enhancement is that we have also introduced a sign out capability, which is log out from that instance, right? So till now there was no such option. So that is something that we have introduced as part of this release. So those are a couple of other minor enhancements that we have done as part of this release.